Yeah, I think so.
We just can't see it though.
Yeah, a little bit.
Record on Brother Safe's stuff, okay?
So start with Brother Safe. Can I move it this way a little bit?
Yeah, I need to move this way anyway.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Make sure it's in focus, okay?
Yeah.
By focus.
Just keep it like
I think I
that.
need to move this
Taha,
back.
move it back.
Yeah.
Move it back. Oh, that's a good picture of Omar. Yo. Alright, let me adjust it so like here, okay? Is it Haseeb? Can you try it one more time?
Do you like playing volleyball?
I'll keep it like this the
You
whole
like
time,
playing
okay?
volleyball?
Is it focused enough? Omar.
Go to Imam
Can
Bash.
you move this way a little bit? Let's look at
But the problem is we have
Right now,
so
it's not
many
'cause
flakes in
Omar's
our
in the way.
chat.
Omar.
We're trying to flood them out with like reliable people. Yeah.
Let me see the green.
Yeah.
Think about it.
I might be a flaker
So
when
if I
it
go
comes to
Brother
that
Safe,
though,
he's chilling.
Yeah. It'll be in
So
focus.
Wednesdays,
Well,
Wednesdays is
Wednesday's
my
my
biggest
biggest day.
my biggest fast day.
Alright.
Oh yeah.
Mela. Yeah. I'm the third.
Yeah, she's very
Well, technically, Badrina, our other friend, is like
Yeah,
one
that's
of
probably
the
not a
same
smart
age.
idea.
Yeah.
What?
She's actually.
Yeah, we're fine. It's already
I'm like
on.
third trip.
Yeah.
She's not.
Yeah, I mean, if you're ready, I already did.
Okay.
One more thing.
Okay.
Yo, when Omar starts speaking, do I zoom out?
All right, Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Thank you all very much for your patience. I'm joined by actually three incredible speakers here today. I have Brother Saif Omar, Ustada Bali Al-Gahid, and Imam Majid. And actually, I think for all three of them, it's their first time speaking at Taqwa. I think Imam Majid did it like a long time ago, but I don't really remember that. I just was scrolling through Instagram. So thanks for having me back. And the topic for this next through series of the grounding is Into the Lion's Den, navigating impossible scenarios. I feel like all of us have experienced what feels like impossible scenarios many times, whether that's in the family, in the workplace, or even like large societal systemic issues. And some of these issues seem not only insurmountable, but so large that we can't even like completely comprehend them. So we're going to be going through a series. We have more excellent speakers coming back next week. But this first week, we're talking about strife in the family. I feel like we all have families. I'm going to make a very radical assumption there. And we're going to also try and look at the story of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, because he absolutely dealt with strife in the family more than anyone. I'm not going to delay any further. The format of this event is we're going to have the speakers talk all the way up until Isha, and then after that we're going to come back and we're going to do discussion questions. My name is Umar Farouk. If you don't know me, I'm the program manager of Aqwa. If you have any feedback, recommendations, kind criticism, I will gladly take it. And without further delay, I'll give it to Brother Saif Umar, and I think he'll introduce all the speakers.
Assalamualaikum everyone. I'm very excited to be here. I think these are the type of conversations that are very much needed. There was a time in the 90s that there was a lot of sloganeering, right? Islam is a solution, the Muslim, ideal Muslim family, etc. And I'm so proud of the community that we've gone to a level in which we're diving into the deeper issues. We're not romanticizing our history. Islamic history wasn't perfect. It was messy. The seerah was not perfect. It was messy. The Quranic stories of the prophets, I mean, I just want to engage the crowd because this is not something that anyone is an expert on. Everyone goes through challenges and everyone goes through family strife. And if we look to our leaders and Imam Majid and Dali, I'm so excited they're here, to contextualize that is not necessarily our fault, but it's our test, right? And how do we reframe it so that when we go through these challenges, we can not only frame it correctly, we can not only understand from the Quran what the perspective of Islam is when these challenges occur, but we can also set up institutions, conversations, support structures so that we can get through it collectively and know that we're not alone as families or individuals or even as a community, that this is a broader problem in society that we are all experiencing together. So I'm very excited about this conversation. If you don't know, this is part of a broader conversation. We only have an hour or so max here, but there are, how many episodes now? about over 49 episodes that dive into this conversation with Imam Majid, Ustaz Dalia, and other guest speakers. And part of the reason that I'm here is that Fawaki is sponsoring that podcast, and it was a no-brainer for me, right? You're going into the Quran and you're analyzing the language. The very language in the Quran is so beautiful that I hadn't realized even. I've heard a lot of tafsirs in English, in Arabic, in classical ones, contemporary ones, but this conversation around the Quran on the real issues that the prophets faced, that the different characters in the Quran faced, it was so enlightening in how the language actually unlocks so much meaning in terms of the specific words used in those conversations and stories. So I'm really excited about this. I look forward to each podcast episode. I hope this conversation will kick off your journey through the Quranic stories, through the podcast, and that we can have this collectively together. Before we start, I wanted everyone to start brainstorming. What are some of the stories in the Quran? Can you just name some family dynamics in the Quran? And then we can analyze, because there's a time in which I was sitting in University of Michigan with a professor, and I was like wide-eyed, young teenage Muslim that thought Islam was perfect, and it is perfect, but in a deeper way. And how a family should be, right? There should be a husband and a wife. The wife should be a muhajjaba. The husband should have a beard. And there should be little kids, and they should all be praying in jama'ah together, right? And Dr. Sherman Jackson told me, he says, "Safe, Islam is not a utopia. Look in the Quran, right? Look in the Quran. Is there any story that's a perfect family story?" Okay, so I want that to kick off the conversation. What are different stories in the Quran about the family? Let's see where we're starting off so we can discuss that. Yes?
Zakaria alayhi salam made a dua that he had a son carry on his lineage or
Right.
his prophethood, and that's Allah blessed him with Yahya.
So he didn't have a son, and then very late in his age, he had a child, right? Not at the ideal age according to modern society. So that's okay. Any others?
Prophet Ibrahim's father and his son.
Ibrahim alayhi salam's father, or some say his uncle, was not a Muslim. So that's a real issue. It's not a perfect situation. And then he's asked to slaughter his son, right? That's a pretty tense situation. All right, what else? Yes, in the back.
I'll give a happy one. Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Khadija, the relationship.
Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Khadija, beautiful. Ruziqtu bihubbiha. He said that I was given the risk of her love. But look, what about the other situations of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? There were also challenges in every relationship. And even Khadija radiallahu anha, she died during the boycott. So that was also a challenging situation. Any others? Yes?
We have Maryam alayhi salam, and that situation of giving birth all alone, the challenging part of that, and then the societal implications of that situation.
SubhanAllah, if you look at Maryam alayhi salam, single mom, right? You look at Isa alayhi salam, no siblings, no dad. Right? You look at all the women in the Quran, you have Asiya married to Pharaoh. You have Lut alayhi salam and Nuh alayhi salam's wives, they say we're not believers. Right? So you're seeing that tension. So almost every situation, Aisha radiallahu anha, we don't think about it, but she didn't have any children. She didn't bear any children. Right? So there's, even the women in the Quran, there's so many different, and one of our teachers said that they're all archetypes. They're all models for us, and the variation is there for us to look to and connect with the different prophets and the Sahaba. Okay, they're going to be, we didn't bring up the issue, the story that we're actually going to be covering today more in detail, which the first part of the podcast focuses on, which is Surah Yusuf. So I'm glad you guys didn't give away the punchline. You left it for them, alhamdulillah. And then also the podcast continues to Surah Taha with Musa alayhi salam. So we'll kick it off now. Dalia, you are a researcher. You have worked at the highest levels with governments and with policy, and you're an author of What a Billion Muslims Think with John Esposito, mashallah. So the perspective you bring, and your own family experience, your own life experiences, coupled with Imam Majid. So tell us a little bit, how did this project start off? Imam Majid, I don't need to introduce, but he is also, in addition to being an imam, in addition to being a scholar of the Quran, one of the unique things that Imam Majid brings to this conversation is that he deals with conflict at the local level within families and counseling marital issues or children issues and really dealing with hundreds and thousands and leading a community with real issues, right? That's not just theoretical stuff you read in books or just history. It's actually real problems that the community faces. So he's very versed in that and intimately involved. And then at the highest levels, he's working with imams, leaders, presidents and prime ministers to resolve conflict at the highest levels. So sometimes there's that local, global connection in which the same issues that are playing out at the micro level are playing out at the macro level. So their conversation together, I'm really looking forward to presenting that to you because that dynamic brings together such a different perspective, both in terms of being a male and a female, being a researcher and a scholar of the Quran, and also dealing with things at the local level, at the macro level, dealing with things with our minds and the policy and the data, but then also engaging our hearts. So I'd like for you to share, how did this project start off?
Thank you so much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. A dua from Surah Taha that we discussed in a lot of detail in the podcast. So we started this podcast actually a couple of years ago, and the way it started is I learned that Surah Yusuf was revealed during the year of sadness, during the year of sorrow, when Rasulullah went through incredible calamities. He lost his wife, Khadija, radiallahu anha, who was his support, his soulmate, the love of his life. And he also lost his uncle within just weeks of each other. And this man had basically raised him. He was his father figure. And not only that, he was his political support. So there was so much, aside from the grief, the deep and heart-wrenching grief that he went through, that it would also made life even harder for him in Mecca. And Surah Yusuf was one of the ways that Allah gave him, one of the gifts Allah gave him to ease his heart, as a balm for his broken heart. And I thought, during my own year of sadness, where I lost my father, where I went through a divorce, and I lost one of my best friends to cancer, all in 1 year, I said I need to study Surah Yusuf. This is the prescription in the Quran to heal broken hearts and to heal grief. So I asked Imam Majid, who is, one of my dearest teachers, could we discuss Surah Yusuf? Could we just meet weekly and just discuss the meanings of the verses and the linguistic miracles in it, the tafsir and so forth, and how it applies to our lives? And he was very generous. He said, yes, of course we can meet and do that, because I was studying it and I was memorizing it with a Quran teacher. And then I thought maybe we could just record these conversations in case it's useful to somebody. And then we thought, well, maybe we'll just make a podcast. So that's really how the podcast came to be. It wasn't that we started out wanting to do a podcast and thought, what should we do it on? It came, very organically the other way around. And so it's called Quran Conversations, and that's exactly what it is. We have conversations about the Quran. So the Quran, why it's relevant to us today is the Quran is a prescription for healing the heart. And that's really what we're doing here, that we're discussing how to, take from the Quran, extract from the Quran the medicine that is in it. The podcast is for anyone wishing to unlock the meaning and healing power of the Quran. So that's what I hope to do today in our discussion.
First of all, I'd like to thank Sarah Dalia for inviting me to be part of this podcast, and thank you for Aki for sponsoring it. But also thanking Brother Wes and Omar Talib and Qahwa for thinking about this series also as well. As Sister Sarah Dalia has said about the importance of seeking comfort in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Prophet, "You that we can strengthen your heart with the Quran. And give you comfort with the stories of prophets and messengers before you. When you read the Quran, you see yourself in it. Because the Quran is a personal message for each one of us. And the more you personalize it, the more you get comfort. And if you can see yourself, each one of you here today have some place in Surah Yusuf. Some place in Surah Yusuf. I don't believe any one of you here can say Surah Yusuf, there's something in Surah Yusuf not related to me. You tell me the story of your life, I will tell you your kids. And therefore, when you read the stories of the Quran, you do see your humanity, you see yourself in the story. And if somebody were to ask me, what surah in the Quran considered the family surah? The Surah Yusuf. It's the family surah. That surah that really addressed all the family dynamic. And that's why it was revealed to Rasulullah before the Hijrah. Because the issue that Rasulullah dealt with in Mecca, all of it in Surah Yusuf. Because Rasulullah, his family, they are the one who betrayed him. His uncle, Abu Lahab, relatives stood against him. That's all of his kin, his cousins. Even when he came back to Mecca, he forgave them immediately. He was so hurt. And then he pushed away from the land. And they come back, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have them with the upper hand for the same people. Rasulullah forgave people in Fatih Makkah, and Yusuf alayhi salam have to confront his brother in the Rasul. Just to say in general, the Rasul have seen himself in Surah Yusuf. That's why it was revealed before the Hijrah.
Thank you, Imam Majid and Ustaz Dalia, for sharing the backstory to this wonderful conversation. And one of the amazing things about Surah Yusuf is that the conflict starts with his brothers. And Sister Dalia, she just mentioned to us before we started that there's data about how sibling strife. We sometimes just think about marital strife, right? And that's one of the data that we measure as a community. We're concerned about is how many people are married. It's very easy to measure, and divorces are very public. But there's so many relationships that we have, whether with friends, or with siblings, or a parent-child relationship, or with a grandparent, any relationship, because relationships generally are struggling, not just marital relationships, right? It's just we don't always measure the other relationships. So can you tell us a little bit more about the types of relationships we're talking about in the marital strife? You mentioned uncles, right? And how does the surah and the Quran generally allow us to think through all of our relationships, and each one of us, maybe we can all think about one relationship that we're struggling with, right? And just think about it, and then maybe get one item by the end of today that we can do to strengthen that one relationship, whether it's a spouse or with a sibling. It could even be with a neighbor or someone else, but just strengthening our relationships and getting inspiration from this surah.
So let me start by asking the audience, has anyone here ever had a conflict with a family member? Raise your hand. It's about as common as breathing. It's part of the human condition. And what the Quran has always been is a book that deals with humanity as it is, and it gives us examples of that. And one thing that I think is really interesting is that Yusuf alayhi salam's dream in the beginning is actually a dream about family reconciliation. And it was actually Omar who pointed that out in such a beautiful way, Omar al-Talib. And I had never sort of thought of it that way. It was about, through his entire journey, all that he did, ups and downs, his actual dream was for his family to come together. and reconcile. And this is mind-blowing. Because as you think about prophets, alayhum salam, they had such high missions to fulfill, bringing truth to humanity, and yet in almost every example, their greatest test was in their family, not in the outside enemies that were fighting them. They had those too, but it was the people closest to them that were their greatest test. So if that is something you're dealing with, you're not alone. It's part of the human condition. So, as the story opens, he talks about this dream where 11 planets and the sun and the moon are prostrating to him. And he goes and he talks about it to his father. And Yaqub alayhi salam answers in a very interesting way. If you think about how he responds, he does at least 3 things. One is he says you need boundaries with your brothers. Don't tell them. So is it okay to have boundaries with family members? Yes. You don't have to tell everybody everything. The second thing he did is he attributed their conniving, as Imam Majid was reminding me today, he attributed their ill will towards Yusuf alayhi salam to shaitan. And what does that do? It keeps the door open for reconciliation because you don't essentialize the evil to the person. So look at the beautiful balance. Boundaries, but there's still an open door. You're not cutting someone off and saying they're just evil. You're holding space for them to possibly atone and come back. And then the third thing is he is encouraged and told that this is something very special. And this is something that Imam Majid started to talk to me about. And I think you should, I'd love to hear your thoughts more on what does it look like when someone tells you about their dreams?
First of all, this was a wonderful, introduction to the story of Yusuf alayhi salam and family union that took place later. But I would like just to say that the amazing thing in the surah is the relationship of Yusuf alayhi salam with his father. One of the biggest problems is the intergenerational problem. There's not that much trust sometimes. People trust their friend more than trust their parents. Because the parents are not either not open to hear the dream of their children, or the children believe that their parents cannot understand their dream. They make it an assumption. And therefore the father and the son relationship is unique. That he will tell him, he will share with his father this amazing dream of his. And then the father encouraging him, telling him, كَذَلِكَ يَجْتَبِيكَ رَبُّكَ Allah, chose you, have chosen you as He chosen, and so blessing upon you, and teach you ability to interpret dreams as He bestowed the blessing upon your family of Yaqub and of your grandfather Ibrahim or Ishaq. Like the father first encouraged him and then also told him, share your dream with someone who will encourage you. If your own brother is going to be jealous, will be jealous of your dream, don't tell them the truth. And one of the things that my father used to say to me, and something he said to me, I'm quite sure he said to my brothers as well, that not everything you have to tell everybody. You tell someone who will encourage you, help you, can share the dreams with you. And then the other thing is that Yusuf alayhi salam was dreaming big. That was a small dream. He encouraged his children to dream big. But dreaming big comes with hardship, doesn't come easy. And then you have to tell them what are the possibility of somebody trying to stop your dream with your own brothers. And then I would like to say one thing about this dynamic between family members. There's a competition happening within the family. Sometimes the brothers and sisters side become jealous of one another because the other one have better grade or make more money now, or whatever it may be. And you can see, you know how you can see someone get jealous of now? When they start down play the success of somebody. Oh yeah, you know, it's not that great. Yeah, I know he's doing good in school, but you know he's this and that and that. Then you find that people have jealousy within the family. How do you address the issue of jealousy? Jealousy and envy is a disease of the heart. It can make a person become so blind to the most horrible thing possible, such as they attempt even to take a life of their own brother. As one of the things my grandfather used to say to us as siblings, he used to say, the success of your brother is your success. He used to say all the success of your brother is your success. Cheer up for your brother, you know, so that they try to address this of jealousy within us as children. But the story is amazing that the father used Ya Bunay, my dear brother, son, my dear beloved son, Ya Bunay, Ma qala ya bni, Ya Bunay. And the son used Ya Abati. You see the acknowledgement of fatherhood and childhood, showing love for your child. And this, by the way, is a very important aspect of conversation. I have seen people call their father or their mothers with their name, first name. Have you seen that or not? Young guys, young ladies. When they talk about somebody, you think that they're talking about their friend. Hassan, this and that. You said, who's Hassan? My father. Really? That never happened in my life. Call my father like his first name. You said my father, my dear father, Abi. You know, that's one of the things that we miss in the culture today. You know, respecting the elder in our family.
I wanted to just build on that, Imam Majid, the idea of the respect for your father. Of course, I completely agree. I even have my son here, so I have to agree with that. Of course, you have to respect your parents. The other side of that, of course, is that how do we as parents, so there's many parents in the room and parents to be, inshallah. How do we as parents be a safe place for our children to tell us their dreams? Because the dream Yusuf had, alayhi salam, could have really been disturbing, unsettling, scary for him. He didn't know what it meant. He wasn't sure if he was in trouble. What does it mean when you have the planets prostrating to you and the sun and the moon? It's such a strange dream. And he's a muwahid. He's a believer. So how did he think of this dream? What did he feel about it? Many of us as children, if we had a dream that unsettled us, the last people we would go to are our parents with it. It's not taken for granted. So I think we're going to continue for a few more minutes and then we go first alone. So there are a couple things that Sayyidina Yaqub does that tells us, gives us some clues as to how to be a safe place for your children to come and tell you their dreams. The first thing is he actually told them not to tell his brothers. And that might seem a little counterintuitive. Why would that make him safe? Because he's realistic about what's happening in the family. And he is okay with setting boundaries even with family members. If you're a person, if you're a parent who, when your child comes and says, this relative's making me uncomfortable, this relative is doing this and this that I'm not comfortable with as a child, and you're like, oh, come on, don't say that. You must have misunderstood it. That's your uncle, that's your cousin, whatever. And you gaslight the child or have no concept of what's really happening in the family. You're in denial. You're not safe. That's the last time that child's going to come to you and tell you anything. So he was conscious of what was going on. And he wasn't in denial about the reality of what his own children were like. So that's a very important point. The second thing is he was given positive reinforcement. This dream means you're chosen. This dream means you have a very special mission. And then he ties it back to his lineage, to his ancestors. This is who you are. When we build up our children, this is who you are. This is your spiritual ancestry are people who believed in one God. All of our spiritual ancestry. We all share that ancestry. And that builds inside him a sense of a person like me is a person of ihsan. So you think about it, how did he leave his father at such a young age, but yet he had that moral integrity in such difficult situations? Of course he was a prophet and he was given revelation. Part of it, though, was that his identity was being built by his father's positive reinforcement and building in him this identity. Who you are is the inheritor of this spiritual tradition. And when we think of ourselves that way, the way you think of yourself, this is research now, your identity, this someone like me behaves this way. Why do people vote against their interests? Because someone like me should be with this presidential candidate. It's not logical. What is identity politics? It's playing on what people identify in themselves. And it's one of the strongest drivers of behavior. So Yaqub alayhi salam was instilling that in his son, and that made him safe.
Thank you, Dalia. What's so powerful about this conversation is we take verses of the Quran that we may go through in a month in Ramadan and Tarawih very quickly, and we memorize it and we focus on, but we don't dive into the beauty of the details in terms of the reflections and things I've never heard about or thought about those dynamics. You both are bringing out from a dynamics perspective, applying it to politics, applying it to so many different areas. One of the things Imam Majid has coined is the word sound effect. The effect the sound of the Quran has. And I felt one of the most powerful parts of the podcast is to be able to feel the pain and the energy and the dynamics of the story based on the mud being used or what words are being used. And you can almost taste the struggle, especially with Yaqub alayhi salam. If you imagine a situation in which you're the prophet and your sons are trying to murder your other son, right? The difficulty and the pain. So how did Yaqub alayhi salam deal with that? How did he deal with, on the one hand, he's pained by Yusuf's being, murdered, according to what his brothers are saying, although he may have known that he still held up hope. On the other hand, he left the door open for his other children, right? So he's dealing with two different tragedies. Yusuf on the one hand, but also the fact that he knows that his sons have done this terrible tragedy. And if we look at the story and play it out and see how that turns around, how did he have that level of patience, and what was his strategy in dealing with his, even the one that was being abused, but also the abusers?
Yaqub alayhi salam has two important qualities: optimism and patience. You cannot be patient, if you're not optimistic. You have to believe that the outcome will be good. In order for you to think like that, the ghaib that I mentioned, believing in the next life, is very important as well. But Yaqub alayhi salam realized that Yusuf alayhi salam told him a dream, and the dream have not materialized yet. Imagine if Yusuf alayhi did not have told him that dream. What hope Yaqub alayhi salam has?
So they both held on to that dream.
Yeah, because like my son, say, has a big dream, and I believe that he will see that dream through. That is his hope. The other thing is that you have this intuition that there's some aligned in. You know, they said there's no perfect climb. When they said that the wolf have eaten him, they brought the shirt like intact. Like as if the wolf said, take off your shirt, I'm gonna it was like there's no struggle, you know. They didn't do the movie well. And therefore when he saw that, he said, no, you cooked something. This is not true. Then he said, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. I'm going to have a beautiful patience. He declared his strategy as a father. How are you going to deal with it? I'm going to kick you out of the house. I don't like this. No. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى. Allah can help me through what you just told me and described to me, because I don't believe it. But there's a hope. There's also that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him a sign. This is not what happened. It's interesting that Yaqub alayhi salam just told them, سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. Although in the beginning he said the shaitan. He said shaitan, that might come between you and your brother. But why he switched now? But سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ. I was sharing with the Ustad Daria, a podcast. The difference between shaitan and nafs. Shaitan actually suggests ideas. But you dwell on them and become a plan, and you execute the plan, that's definitely the nafs. Because they might thought about, Yusuf, well brought and, our father, than us and so forth. And then they had a plan. This plan is nafs. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about Qabil and Habil, فَطَوَّعَتْ لَهُ نَفْسُهُ فَقَتَلَهُ. His nafs made it easy for him, to do so, because he became a plan and executed the plan, and he's meditated this plan and so forth. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us that Yaqub said, سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا, because he wanted them to rethink, their own state of their nafs. فيعقوب عليه السلام in the surah also said إنما أشكي بثي وحزني إلى الله وأعلم من الله لا ما لا تعلمون. This is the hope. I'm complaining to Allah, not you. You have this beautiful way of grieving, but connecting that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he said also, I know about Allah what we don't know. That's the hope. Something good can happen. But he was grieving and crying and so forth. But it was not an easy patient. The patient that lost his sight. He couldn't see. That is not good. People say, don't cry, be patient. Excuse me, excuse me. Crying is a good thing. People said men don't cry. There's a man, his name Yaqub, he cried until he lost his sight. And was a big man, was a real man. For this misunderstanding of manhood, when he grieved his son until his, he lost his sight. But that was Sabr Jameel. Grieving does not contradict patience at all. It's very interesting that Yaqub alayhi salam, his hope of meeting Yusuf again brought him his sight back. He started smelling Yusuf from distance. So strong relationship. Yusuf. He smelled Yusuf before he arrived. And if you talk about love, the Quran described this love of the father to his parent to the child. It's unbelievable. The same thing when the Quran described the love of mother of Musa to Musa. And Allah comforted the mother. And matter of fact, can I say this? My father said something very interesting about the contrast between Yaqub and he said, because Allah knows that the love of mother is stronger than the love of the father in general, he comforted the mother, but he didn't comfort Yaqub. لا تخافي ولا تحزني إنه رادوه إليك. He didn't tell Yaqub that I'm going to bring him back to you. But he told the mother, don't worry about it, I'm going to bring him back to you. You could have told Yaqub, لا تحزن, don't cry, I'm going to bring him. But he told the mother. Although the mother and the father both love their children, but the mother of intense. But he said to her, the mother of Musa, لا تخافي إنا ردوه إليك. Let him go, bring him back to you. Yaqub alayhi salam let go, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comfort. He has a hope and believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And later the Bushara came after a while. So,
one of the things that really struck me about studying on Majid is that after they committed that heinous crime, and he knew they were lying because their story didn't make any sense, he didn't cut them off.
absolutely.
He didn't cut them off. He kept the door open for them. And at the very end, when they also lost Binyamin, alayhi salam, and he told them, go find your brothers. And they're like, these could have been other people. You're still talking about Yusuf. And he says this, and I'm going to get it wrong, so I don't want to quote it right now, but what he says, what means, don't give up on Allah's mercy. And and there's two ways to understand that. One way is, don't give up the hope that you can find your brothers, that it's possible. And that's the most common interpretation and understanding of this clause or this quote from Yaqub alayhi salam. The other way you can think about it is he's talking to them about their own soul. You can make this right. You can make this right. You lost your brother, go find him and make this right. You can repent. Don't give up on Allah's mercy for you. And that was such a powerful lesson. Everyone reads this story and we identify with Yusuf or we identify with Yaqub alayhi salam. Nobody identifies with his brothers. We're not brother killers or brother abductors, obviously. But we have something to learn from his brothers. And that is, no matter what, we cannot give up on Allah's mercy. And in a family, oftentimes it does include atoning, not just forgiving. Because if all of us are just forgiving, who's committing this, the aggression? Some of us do have something to atone for. do have something to apologize for. And sometimes the guilt and the shame is so heavy, and we've given up on Allah's mercy that we just can't make it right. We've surrendered to the weight of the shame, and people live with it all their lives and can never really make amends because they feel so locked in. And this ayah, this surah, reminds us that even this horrific sin that they committed, they were able to come and atone for it. One of the themes of this surah is of atonement. You know, we are not talking, we haven't mentioned the wife of Al-Aziz. She has one of the most powerful examples of atonement and repentance in the whole Quran. Her confession is so strong, and in front of her king and in front of everybody. So this idea of he didn't cut them off and he wouldn't allow them to give up on their own soul and on Allah's mercy even for them.
SubhanAllah, we can really see how the Quran has ahsan al-qasas, the best of characters. I mean, you could make a movie from any of these characters' perspective, from the wife of the Aziz, from Yusuf al-Islam. We always think about the prophets, and we sometimes neglect the perspective of Yaqub al-Islam, looking at it from his brother's perspective, looking at it from different perspectives. So this is very wonderful, and I'd like to let you know that, inshallah, you can go deeper into this conversation in the podcast and engage it and comment on there and share it with your family and start discussions. Hopefully this will kick off discussions in your families and yourselves and your own reflective journey that you're reading the Quran, to know that you can go to layers of depth like we've just seen, just analyzing the first few ayahs of the surah. Inshallah, next week, although we will be coming back after Isha, so please do come back. We'll be stopping for Isha momentarily, so we want to get there on time and focus on the prayer and prioritize prayer. But we'll be coming back here to have a more engaging discussion right after Isha, so don't leave. But in case some people aren't able to come back, we have Brother Uwais Sheikh here, and Brother Umar Al-Talib will be having an amazing discussion on how these types of lessons affect our work life as well, and dealing with issues we have at work, because you can see that these lessons are endless. You can see the leadership Yaqub al-Islam is playing and Yusuf al-Islam is playing, and they really, the Quran is a recipe and a medicine, as Ustaz Adalia said, for all aspects of our life, inshallah. So we'll take a break now for Isha, and then we'll be coming right back to have a more engaging discussion to close out the session. Yes? The podcast, Quran Conversation. And the Quran Conversation podcast, you can find it on Apple or any of the podcasts. You can get on there, and you can even download it so you can listen to it when you're not in that area with Wi-Fi. I really encourage everyone to look into that. All right?
Stop recording now. Okay. Sorry, we can post it. Oh, I'll check for the mic.
Just like
Yo, how do you end this?
Thank you so much, Brother Uwais Sheikh.